Hey guys, happy Wednesday. We are back again. This time I'm reading chapter 17, Compromise Verdict. While Tyrell got back to work in Chicago, the Hayes-Tilden war raged on. Tilden had definitely won about 250,000 more votes than Hayes, but even that was deceptive. In southern states, bands of pro-democratic thugs had openly used violence and intimidation to prevent thousands of African-American men from voting. Republican-controlled election boards in the South struck back by throwing out thousands of valid Democratic votes. So basically, there was no way to figure out whom voters had actually meant to elect. As 1877 began, both sides were still battling over the three undecided states: Florida, South Carolina, and Louisiana. The inauguration of the new president was set for March 5th. "Tilden or blood," shouted furious Democratic crowds. There was talk of armed marches on Washington, maybe even another civil war. A panicked Congress scrambled to set up a special commission made up of 5 members of the House of Representatives, 5 members of the Senate, and 5 Supreme Court justices. Their task was to decide who won the election. The commission had 8 Republicans and 7 Democrats. The vote was 8-7 for the Republican, Rutherford B. Hayes. The trial of Jack Hughes and Terrence Mullen began on May 29, 1877. The Springfield courtroom, said a local reporter, was crowded to the utmost capacity. The prosecutor, Charles Reed, produced a parade of witnesses. The manager of the St. Charles House decided Hughes and Mullen as guests. I don't know why I said decided. The manager of the St. Charles House identified Hughes and Mullen as guests in his hotel on Election Day, showing the jury the register book in which the 2 men had signed in, under false names. Charles Elkin, the streetcar conductor, testified that he saw 2 men running from the Lincoln Monument grounds late that night. The farmers, Thomas Kegel and John Dixon, told of seeing Hughes and Mullen the next morning. John Carroll Power testified about seeing Hughes and Sveggles at the monument the afternoon of the robbery attempt. Private Eye George Hay told the jury about his embarrassing accidental gunshot and identified Hughes as one of the men he'd seen at the monument while waiting inside Memorial Hall. Tyrell produced the tools left behind by the grave robbers and told his story. Sveggles spent 2 hours on the stand, detailing his work as a roper and his role in the plot. Defense attorneys attacked the roper, calling him a liar and a thief, but Sveggles was not shaken in the least, reported the Illinois State Journal. This was all very damaging to the defendants, but it was the 2 letters Mullen wrote from jail that really sank them. Charles Reed showed them to the jury and had them read aloud. Here was Mullen, in his own words, begging friends to provide Hughes and himself with bogus alibis. When it was Hughes' turn to take the stand, he stuck to the same basic story he'd been telling since the arrest. Sure, he and Mullen had been in Springfield on Election Day to find Mullen's sick brother. Sure, they'd been seen with Sveggles because he kept following them around, urging them to rob the Lincoln Monument. In fact, Hughes explained, that's why they left town in such a hurry that night. They knew Sveggles was about to commit this crazy crime, and they knew they'd been seen in town with him, so they hit the road to avoid unjust suspicion. Mullen's version was the same, but delivered without Hughes' brash confidence. He talked so quietly the judge had to keep asking him to speak up. Closing statements finished up at 1 a.m. The jury met all night, quickly agreeing that the men were guilty. But there was debate over the proper punishment, which could be up to 5 years. Hughes and Mullen did not impress the jury as particularly bright. They just didn't seem capable of designing a complex plot to steal and ransom Lincoln's body. Several jurors were convinced Sveggles was really the brains of the operation. The next morning at 9 a.m., the courtroom was packed again to hear the jury read its verdict. We, the jury, find the defendants guilty as charged in the indictment and fix the term of their confinement in the penitentiary at 1 year each. Tyrell was disappointed. The sentence, 1 year in the penitentiary, is a compromise verdict, he complained to Chief Brooks. Discussing the surprisingly light sentence, the Chicago Times expressed the same doubts as the jurors. There is reason to believe that the actual extent of the plot is not yet exposed, and many think that Mullen and Hughes, though really guilty of complicity in the plot, did not contrive it, but are really the tools of smarter men. That reporter had no idea how right he was. So that reporter says that Hughes and Mullen did not come up with this plan on their own. They were just doing it for someone else because they're not smart enough to have thought of this on their own. Hughes and Mullen were handcuffed again and taken by train to Joliet. There they joined Ben Boyd as prisoners at the Illinois State Penitentiary. Tyrrell returned to Chicago and went back to chasing Coney men. On June 21st, he took a quick break to visit Robert Lincoln, who'd asked him to stop by. When Tyrrell arrived, Lincoln pointed out a large portrait of his father. He wanted Tyrrell to have the painting as a gift for protecting his father's remains. I thanked Mr. Lincoln for his kind appreciation of my actions and said that I had only done my duty. There was just one last detail to settle. Chief, I have the tools captured by me on the night of November 7th, 1876, in the monument, which were used as evidence in the trial of Terrence Mullen and Jack Hughes. What shall I do with them? Tyrrell suggested the Lincoln Monument Association might want them. Brooks agreed. That summer, Tyrrell traveled to Springfield to investigate one of his ongoing counterfeiting cases. Before leaving town, he rode out to the Lincoln Monument and handed John Carroll Power a box containing a hammer, a file, a bullseye lantern, a pair of pliers, a saw blade, and a broken padlock. Power put it all on display in his glass cases in Memorial Hall. So they actually put it in the monument for people to see, like, this is the bag of tools that was used to attempt to steal Lincoln's body. Okay, and that was the end. Tomorrow I will read the epilogue, which is titled Final Resting Place. So short chapter today, but y'all know I'm going to leave you hanging. So see ya. Bye.